Welcome to Intermissions, your backstage pass to On the Air with Florenza. You'll experience bloopers, outtakes, surprises, and all the laughter in between. Intermissions is unscripted, unfiltered, and undeniably Florenza. So put your hands together to welcome today's guest to the show. I cannot take credit for these. I wish I could, but they are generated randomly. And I, I'm excited to hear what these questions are with you. So we get what we get and we don't throw a fit. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Throw them at me.
Okie dokie. Would you rather be stuck on an orca with Quint during shark season or try to direct Robert Shaw in a stage play with no script?
With no script. Wow. So nobody wants to be in the. Let's just remember what happened at the end of Jaws. Are we allowed to give away spoilers here for a movie that's 50 years ago?
If someone is unfamiliar with Jaws, I think
Yeah,
they've been
exactly.
under a rock and they deserve to give an account for their actions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, it didn't go well for Quint in the end of that movie. So would I rather be in that shark-infested water with a guy that's already proven that he could get beaten by a shark? And on the flip side, that's kind of like the best and the worst, right?
Uh-huh.
On the flip side, being in the middle of a shark-infested waters with Quint being the worst. I mean, Robert Shaw, my uncle, was an absolutely fascinating man, and he was one of those people. We all know people like this that when he entered a room, he took it over. He
Yeah.
became the center of attention, and not by trying to, just by
Mhm.
having so much energy and passion. And so to direct him on stage with no script, I would say just saddle him up and let him go. I think that would be a strong preference.
Nice. Would you rather arm wrestle Richard Dreyfuss or outdrink Robert Shaw in 1975?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think I could outdrink Robert Shaw, and I don't say that from personal experience. But
Uh-huh.
one of the people who another author, Nat Segaloff, who was kind enough to read the book and give some quotes, for the back that are on the back cover.
Uh-huh.
As a young man, he met my uncle. I mean, I did too, but I was a teenager basically when he died. I was 21, but I was in college by that point, so I hadn't been home. So I think the last time I saw him, I was a teenager. But then this other author talked about having met him when he was in his 20s, when the other fellow, Nat Segaloff, was in his 20s. And he said he went out drinking with him and, just couldn't keep up. And Robert appeared completely sober
Uh-huh.
afterwards while Nat stumbled away. What were the two?
The two
Arm
would,
wrestle Richard Dreyfuss.
yes.
Richard Dreyfuss in the movie. I have no idea what he's like in real life. I just know him as an actor. He certainly came across as somebody that I could hold my own with in an arm wrestling contest.
I think you could
But
take them. I think you could take them. I really do. I think you
these
got
are
that one.
some.
Okay. Would you rather, ooh, spend a day on a real shark boat with Steven Spielberg or a week at a writer's retreat with your uncle Robert? And I know that
Wow.
answer would be with Rob just because of present time, but let's say
Yeah.
this was prior to his passing. Which would you rather do?
Yeah, so unlike your first two would you rathers, where there was an enormous difference between
Yeah.
them, those are both like really interesting. I mean, I'll tell you what Robert thought of Steven Spielberg. right?
Oh, do
Because
tell.
yeah, because when the movie Jaws was filmed, which was it came out in 1975, but it was filmed in the summer of 1974. And at that point, Spielberg was in his mid 20s, 26 maybe, or something like that. And Robert was by that point a pretty well-known actor. He had done, From Russia with Love and
Yes.
The Sting and some other big things. And he was in his late 40s. So this is, sort of this young kid, right? I mean, when you're in your late 40s, I look at, I know you have children in your 30s. I heard you say that
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
pod. I also do, right?
Uh-huh.
But when I look at somebody who's just out of college by, a few years, they are kids. They seem like kids to
Mm-hmm.
me, not
Mm-hmm.
adults.
Yeah.
They seem like kids. But despite that, Robert, so my mother spent a week on the set of Jaws, which is where I got a lot of, sort of the backstories from her in terms of what went on. And one of the things that happened was that when she first met Spielberg, and here's this kid, right,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
who is clearly in charge, or at least has a I'm in charge attitude,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yes.
And she thinks, man, this is just a kid. She called him a snotty-nosed kid. And Robert said, Joey, my mother's name was Joanna, but Robert called her Joey. That kid is a genius. Just wait and see what happens here. So Robert was, and at that time, Spielberg had done virtually nothing. A
Uh-huh.
couple of TV movies, very good movies, but not, nothing that people knew about. And so he was one of the first to identify Spielberg as a, true genius, which he proved he was,
Yeah.
over the years. At the same time, so your other would you
Option.
rather was, yeah, I mean, Robert was, and this is what surprises a lot of people because they know him from Quint.
Yeah.
They know him maybe from some of his other acting in The Sting and from Russia with Love, A Man for All Seasons, where he played Henry VIII and things like that. But he wrote 5 novels and 3 plays. One of his plays ran on Broadway for a year. That doesn't happen unless,
Yeah.
it's
It's
something
good.
special.
Mm-hmm.
The Man in the Glass Booth, and he was nominated for a Tony Award for writing the play. So he was nominated for an Academy Award for acting in A Man for All Seasons and a Tony Award nomination for writing. And not many, I can't think of many people that have that kind of breadth of talent
Yes.
and accomplishment. So I'm going to have to take a pass
Okay.
on your question. Would you rather? Because I would love to hang out with Steven Spielberg, and I would
And
love to do, have a writing class or whatever it was with Robert.
I would say that is a and. And our last one,
Okay.
would you rather be on the set of Jaws during a stormy shoot day or I do not know where this question came from, so I'm interested to hear the answer, or sit
Yeah.
between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss during a disagreement.
Huh. Well, I don't get seasick, so I
Okay.
think I can handle myself on the boat in stormy weather.
I
But
think
at the
I'm with
same,
you on that.
yeah, but at the same time, and this is something Robert used to say, and my mother observed it. It can be very boring to be on a movie set,
Yeah.
and for the reason that you just said, uh, um, you know, there's sailboats in the way. The sky isn't quite the same color as it was yesterday
Yeah.
morning when we were filming this same scene. The shark isn't working. That's sort of the
Yeah.
famous line. But the weather has come up and so it's just a lot of sitting around and waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, somebody comes by, in another little motorboat, right? Because this was all filmed
Right,
out on
right.
the ocean. And they say, time for you, Mr. Shaw, time for your, scene in front of the camera. and he gets ready to go, and then they go, wait, something's come up. You're gonna have to wait, a little longer. So I think my answer there would be, I would have loved to have sat between Robert and Richard Dreyfuss during a disagreement. That would be fun. And it would be fun in large part because Robert was a hugely entertaining person, right? So he was funny, he was passionate, he was honest, sometimes brutally honest. And here's the thing about Richard Dreyfuss, and I don't know Richard Dreyfuss personally. All I have is the stories that my grandmother and my mother shared with me about their experience on the set. But what they shared with me was that, contrary to maybe common belief, Robert really liked Richard Dreyfuss, thought very highly of him, both as a person and as an actor. Now, the reason the myth grew up is because as soon as they put their costumes on, they became
the
Quint
characters.
and they became, mortal enemies,
Yes.
so to speak. But outside, and we're talking, I think now, out of character, Richard Dreyfuss was also, again, according to my sources, that sat there with them for a week, and was in between the two of them. Exactly the what if that you just posed. And he was equally confident and honest and outgoing and charismatic. So I think that would have been the place to be between the two of them when some disagreement came up, because they were both very entertaining.
Wow. Well, thank you for playing that. That was actually pretty fun. I did not know what to expect myself.
I didn't either.
And this wraps up our episode of Intermissions, your backstage pass to On the Air with Florenza. Be sure to check out the full interview for this author as well as others on Florenza's podcast, On the Air with Florenza. And until next time, cheers.